With 2 weeks to go until signing day, recruiting news is hot and heavy. A speedy wide receiver from Idaho recently pledged to the Ducks, and this weekend is slated to be a huge recruiting visit weekend in Eugene. Plus, my full USC scouting report as well as my complete preview and prediction of this West Coast war on Saturday afternoon. This is the TSOW you've all been waiting for. Let's not waste any more time. It kicks off right now.
This place has everything. In fact, the grass is damn green in Eugene.
That performance deserves a holy wallawa.
It's a feeling you cannot explain.
This place is louder than any other venue in the Big Ten.
This program is staged to compete and to win championships.
Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon!
And welcome to That Show Out West for That Team Out West. I'm Ted LaRue. The eyes of the college football world will be on the West this weekend. Man, I wish I could be there. I wish I could be there with each and every single one of you, because I know that Saturday, from college game day all the way through the conclusion of the game on Saturday at Autzen Stadium, it is going to be cinematic. Because at the beginning of the season, of course, we knew Oregon would be a pretty good team. We kind of figured that they would be in the position that they're in right now, but we kind of looked to later in the season to be like, hey, if there's one game on this schedule that is going to be the most rowdy, that Oregon fans are going to be the most juiced up for, it is this USC game. And, you know, we kind of knew what USC had done the past few years. They weren't really in a playoff position, certainly the last couple of seasons under Lincoln Riley, but you looked at the Trojans to be like, well, if they get this better and if they kind of get their act together here, you kind of look at the schedule, I'm like, okay, if they kind of get through that tougher 4-game stretch in the middle of the year fairly unscathed, they could be in a position to play themselves into the college football playoff when they meet Oregon. And guess what? That's exactly where they are. I personally believe this can be an elimination game for both teams. It is certainly an elimination game for USC with 2 losses. A second loss for Oregon, man, they are teetering. They are really teetering considering the national narrative surrounding the Ducks right now. You want to guarantee your spot in the playoff? A win over a top 15 USC team will certainly maybe get that done for the Ducks. So I cannot wait. All of the eyes of the college football world. This is the biggest and best game in the FBS. But remember what I started with this show. It is a showcase for Western college football, and it's not only at the FBS level. I want to give a shout out to the FCS level because there is a big-time rivalry with big-time stakes in that level of football. Number 2 Montana hosting number 3 Montana State in maybe the rivalry with the best name of them all, the Brawl of the Wild, the 124th meeting between these two teams. They're going to meet up in Missoula. I've driven across Montana many times over the last 4 or 5 years. I drive through Bozeman. I drive through Missoula. I've been to each of these team stadiums throughout the summer, and I'll let me kind of tell you my side on this. If there was a place, if I didn't live in the Twin Cities, and maybe in the future if I retired to somewhere, there's a handful of places that I would want to retire to. Somewhere near Joseph, Oregon, of course, Holy Wallawa, Boise, Idaho, and Missoula, Montana. That's the part of Montana on the interstate there in the northwest when things get absolutely beautiful. It's pretty nice in Bozeman as well, but when you look at this University of Montana campus and the town there, the stadium is tight and nestled into campus. It is nestled within the mountains. It has that college atmosphere, whereas you go to Bozeman, Bozeman as a city does not hold, it very much sticks out like a sore thumb. It's becoming very corporate with a lot of people from other parts of the country moving to Bozeman, maybe after watching the TV show Yellowstone. But you look at their stadium, it's just a big old parking lot out in front of it, which I'm sure is nice for tailgating as well. But I very much favor Missoula over Bozeman. So as it pertains to this big Western game, I got 2 words for you. Go Grizz. All right, let's get back on track. Let's get back to the FBS. Let's get back to Eugene, Oregon, and let's get back to talking about our beloved Oregon Ducks right now. I'm really pumped up to preview this Oregon USC game and predict it. We'll have that a little bit later on during the program. But I think coming into the season, we knew that this weekend would be huge for recruiting. And that's where I want to start this program off, on the Oregon recruiting trail. So let's get in our stagecoaches. Let's get in our covered wagons, because, folks, with now less than 2 weeks to go until the opening of the early signing period, we can see Oregon City on the horizon. We've gone through kind of the bumps on the trail a little bit, but the end is near for the class of 2026. And Oregon recently added their 19th commit to the class of 2026. Holy Wallawa, in the form of 3-star wide receiver Hudson Lewis from Timberline High School in Boise, Idaho. 5'9", 170 pounds. He was committed to Utah, but after Oregon offered him on Sunday, he committed to his dream school. There's a lot of quotes. Go find Max Torres' article and his interview with Hudson over on Scoop Duck. There's a lot of, let's just call it, favorable quotes, like, this is the offer that Hudson was waiting for. And, maybe he was just kind of holding on to Utah just in case he didn't get that Oregon offer, but he eventually did. And, of course, now he's going to be an Oregon Duck in 2026. But the first thing I see when I look at Hudson is just its speed, its quickness. He's that annoying slot receiver that can get you 6 yards, that can kind of keep the chains moving. How about a 10.61 time in the 100-yard dash? A really quick first step, a really good burst and movement off of the line of scrimmage as well. And the Idaho pipeline continues for pass catchers. Kenyon Sadiq from Idaho, of course, 5-star wide receiver in the class of 2024. Gatlin Bear, who's going to be joining the team in 26. He's also from the state of Idaho, so you keep that pipeline continuing, at least in pass catchers is concerned. Would love to have had Kelvin Obot, who's from the state of Idaho, but he committed to Utah over there. One of the first things that popped in my mind a little bit right away was, okay, you take a 3-star wide receiver, maybe a little bit of a project, somebody that's going to need some development, certainly before he gets on the field, especially with this golden age of wide receiver recruiting, the way it's going right now for Oregon. Some kind of popped into my head as like, oh, does this signal that this staff is pretty out on their possibilities to be able to flip a couple of modern-day Monarchs that are committed to Ohio State right now? And I think the answer is these things aren't really related, because I think when you look at Hudson Lewis, this is a very low risk type of move, and he's just a very different wide receiver. You don't, like, a lot of times, especially when you recruit at the level that Oregon does, you don't get a lot of these smaller, quicker slot receivers that are very much into this type of role. You're recruiting guys that can move all around the formation. You're recruiting guys that are playing at the X, that are playing at the Z, that can do so many different things because you're Oregon. I mean, you've proven that you can recruit at that type of level. So I don't think these things are necessarily, related with the ability to flip Caden Dixon-White or Chris Henry Jr. But now I want to kind of make my way into that right now. I don't think Oregon is going to flip either of those guys. Recent intel from Greg Biggins over at Rivals suggests Chris Henry Jr. is pretty damn locked in with Ohio State right now. Caden Dixon-Wyatt was always probably the more realistic of the options, but recent intel suggests USC has more of a shot to flip KDW than Oregon does right now. Flipping a wide receiver from Ohio State is already a significant challenge. And here's kind of the way I feel about it with wide receiver right now. Like, this is still a stacked room for what's coming in 2026. This is still the golden age of Oregon wide receiver recruiting and wide receiver development right now, even without those two guys from down in Southern California. I mean, you got Jalen Lott, Messiah Hampton, Catlin Bear coming into this class. We're going to talk about those two and where they stack up in the recent read rankings of the Rivals 300. Spoiler alert, they're pretty damn high. Spoiler alert, they're pretty damn good. You combine those three guys, DeCorian Moore is going to be back, of course. Cooper Perry is going to be back. Jeremiah McClellan is going to be back. I mean, this room is absolutely loaded at wide receiver. So if Oregon is going to pursue flips, if Oregon is going to pursue moves in the next 2 weeks, close to signing day, you'd like to see it at maybe some other positions. I don't know. I mean, interior defensive line is one that I would like to see, especially considering you lost Tamahini Tapui to USC. You lost Viliami Malawa over there to North Carolina. Not sure what the status of those two guys is, or maybe some other defensive line commits, but that's a position where maybe you'd like to see a little bit more money invested if they can find it in this last 2 weeks. But wide receiver, the point is, wide receiver and the future at wide receiver is extremely bright right now. Earlier in the week, a new Rivals 300 dropped, and why do I say the future at wide receiver is so bright? Because the top two players, I should say it this way, the top two Oregon commitments are wide receivers. Jalen Lott is now the number 16 overall player, and he has been upgraded from a 4-star to a 5-star, a Rivals 5-star and an industry 5-star. He's absolutely tearing it up down in Texas at Panther Creek High School. 1,200 yards, 19 touchdowns this season. He's really taken a big jump up in his senior season. Messiah Hampton, the number 30 overall player in the new Rivals 300. Man, you look back, I remember a year ago, he was in the 200s? Maybe, the low 100s, 180, 190, something like that. He has just skyrocketed. Every time there's a new rankings, Messiah Hampton just continues to go up and up and up. And I'll tell you what, I think there's a chance. We look at Jordan Davison, the role that he's playing. You look at Brandon Finney and the role that he's playing as well this year. I think the fact of the matter is, I think Jalen Lott could be a guy that could come in as a freshman and maybe make a similar impact. I truly believe that, considering what the wide receiver room could look like in 26. Obviously, it depends on what Evan Stewart decides as well. I think one interesting riser in this latest Rivals 300 was our man Tony Cumberland, playing locally at Willamette High School. If you remember, interviewed head coach Josh Line about him during the offseason. He said, okay, Tony's doing great. Tony plays with a lot of burst. Tony plays with a lot of quickness, but he needs to dedicate himself to the weight room. And I've caught a little bit of Tony, and you can see that strength on display. Rising up from 115 to number 41. Now, kind of looking at it on the flip side, guys that have dropped and kind of continue to drop. Emmanuel Ahinacho and Jet Washington. Manny right now, number 45 in the latest Rivals 300. They actually have him at the 4-star. I think he's an industry 5-star, but Rivals dropped him to a 4, which I just don't really understand it. I watch him on tape, I look at his frame, I'm like, that's a freaking stud right there. Jet Washington dropped down to number 114. I mean, I look at his size, I look at what he can do, and maybe they're grading him as a safety, and maybe they don't see him at the next level, maybe getting up to that 5-star level as a safety. I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that point, but that's where they got him. Anthony Tank Jones. I mean, they got him as a 4-star player at number 65 in the country. So there's some here that kind of don't make a ton of sense. But, Tommy Tofi, giving him some love at number 162. I think with more of a West Coast presence now with On3 and Rivals, you're going to see guys on the West Coast, maybe that aren't in Southern California, like Tofi, maybe rise up the ranks a little bit as well. 8 players in the top 65 in the new Rivals 300. For reference, USC has 4. Notre Dame has 6, but all of Notre Dame's are in the top 30. Let's talk about this weekend. Maybe this is what you all kind of came here to see as far as recruiting goes. A lot of those names that I was just talking about are going to be on campus in Eugene. Jalen Lott is going to be there. Tank Jones, Tommy Toffee, Bryson Beaver, Tristan Phillips will all be on campus for this game. But really, this weekend has turned out to be a big weekend for the 2027 kids. Keyshawn Bowman, who is I think like a high 4-star, low 5-star wide receiver. He was originally committed to Oregon. He reopened his commitment. He's going to be on campus in Eugene, and you've got the best of the best at other skill positions, or other players at the skill positions, I should say. Easton Royal, the number 1 wide receiver and number 7 overall player, he's going to be in Eugene. Kamon Spell was a Penn State commit when Franklin got fired. He decommitted and reopened up his commitment. He's the number 3 overall player and number 1 running back as well. Marcus Facatel, I hope I'm saying that right. The number 28 overall player, number 2 defensive lineman, and number 2 player in the state of California. He's going to be on campus. Now, Spell did decommit from Penn State, as I said. Notre Dame seems to be the favorite, but hey, you get these kids into Eugene, you get these kids out of this atmosphere, especially if Oregon's able to get away with a win, that could leave a lasting impression. Royal, Oregon offered him in July. Ole Miss and Miami are the perceived leaders, but man, home run ability every time this kid touches the football. Facatel, former 2028 kid, he reclassed to 2027, visited Oregon for the spring game. How about 6'7", 295 pounds? Adam Gorney and Steve Wiltfong of Rivals have predicted him to Notre Dame about a month ago. So this is a big-time opportunity for Oregon to kind of reestablish themselves in some of these races for these 2027 kids. All right, it is time to focus on the right here. It is time to focus on the right now. We got a big one this weekend, and we got some big game blacks being donned by this Oregon football team on Saturday. Remember like last year when they had the All Blacks in the Big Ten title game against Penn State? They had the All Blacks in the middle of the regular season and that big one against Ohio State. And like that mid-October 2024 matchup against the Buckeyes, you best believe the house is going to be rocking, don't bother knocking at Autzen Stadium this weekend. You know, they've worn a good amount of black, I'll certainly say, this season. And I am like, I kind of maybe venture and be like, give me more green, give me more yellow, wear the school colors, kind of thing. Hey, let's lean maybe a little bit more into that, but you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with the steel plating on the shoulders. You can't go wrong with this uniform. But that helmet slaps, as the kids say. You got that green helmet with like some darker wings on there as well. This is a real nice looking uniform as far as black uniforms go. So where does it stack up on my uniform power rankings? Here it is. It stacks up at number 4 out of 11. I really like this one. The shoe duck, number 1 still, that uniform against Indiana with the green pants and the green helmet. You guys know how I feel about contrast, color 1, color 2, color 1, color 2, kind of a thing as well. I still think that Northwestern uniform, the yellow helmet with the green O, is one of my favorite helmets of the year. But I'm slotting this one in at number 4, above the Iowa uniform, above the Mummy Duck at 6, above the one that they wore on Friday against Minnesota out there at number 7. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 out of the 11 uniforms have been black this year. And one thing I've also noticed, no yellow tops, no yellow jerseys this year. And of course, they're going to go on the road to play Washington, so they're not going to wear them there. Maybe they're saving the yellow for a home playoff game or a playoff game down the line. That remains to be seen. It is finally time to talk about this game. It is finally time to talk some ball. And I'm going to begin with my TSOW Skyline report so you can know the foe. Of course, we all know who it is. It's the 15th ranked University of Southern California Trojans, who enter with an 8-2 record. Their only losses prior to this matchup are against Illinois and Notre Dame. So just one loss in the Big Ten, just like the Oregon Ducks. Lincoln Riley, in his 4th season as head coach of this program, a 34-16 record. Of course, he is also the offensive play caller. Danton Lynn is in his 2nd year as Trojans defensive coordinator, and he's done a really nice job improving this defense. I suppose it couldn't go down from where it was under Alex Grinch. The Trojans are 13th in the country overall in F+. They are number 1 in the country in offensive F+, and they're a top 50 defense, 46th in the country in the defensive F+ ratings. Of course, when you talk about USC, you have to talk about a prolific passing attack. They are one of the best teams in all of college football at throwing the ball down the field. And it starts with quarterback Jayden Maiava. Now, if you doubted, considering what happened last year with Miller Moss and then eventually going to Jayden towards the end of the year, if you doubted Lincoln Riley's ability to take a quarterback under his wing and develop a quarterback and have a quarterback really lead a top offense in college football, well, this year is kind of back to what he did prior to maybe last year with the Caleb Williams of the world and the Kyler Murrays of the world and the Baker Mayfields of the world. Jayden Maiava was a little bit of a raw talent when he transferred in from UNLV before last season. And in those last couple of games last year, you saw some bad decisions, you saw some inconsistencies. But this full offseason has provided a totally different version of Jayden Maiava. He leads the Big Ten in passing yards, over 2,800 this year. He's making better decisions with the football. It doesn't mean that he hasn't made bad decisions. There's been a few times where it's like, what are you doing? It looked like it did at the end of 2024. But for the most part, Jayden is confident in this offense. Lincoln Riley and the offensive staff have confidence in Jayden to execute what they want him to do out there. One thing about Jayden, I'll get to this maybe when I talk about the offensive line about USC in just a moment, but the quarterback run has also been a wrinkle. He's mobile. He can get around. I'm not saying he's running a 4.4 or 4.5 40 or anything like that, but you have seen designed quarterback run where Jayden Maiava is reading the defensive end or reading parts of the defense, and he can move the sticks and he can get things going in the right direction. And then he's also he's mobile in the pocket at kind of, maybe when the protection breaks down a little bit, he's got good awareness to kind of shift out and create a second type of passing opportunity. Now, there's a lot of quarterbacks that would be really, really good when you're throwing the ball to the best wide receiver combination outside of Columbus, Ohio in the entire country. And that's Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane. Like, Makai Lemon is going to be a first-round draft pick in the spring. I have absolutely no doubt about that. And the thing about Makai, and that's where I want to start with this, is like he's so tough to stop. He's basically unguardable. Nebraska did a really good job at keeping him limited. But other than that, it's just like, you have to accept Makai Lemon is going to get his. In this case, that's the Lemon law, right? He's gonna just do what he's gonna do. I mean, he's gonna go for close to 100. He's gonna get his 5 catches. He's gonna get his 6 catches, things like that. The tough part about Makai is, he's a little bit of a smaller stature, but they put him in so many different spots. They put him in the slot. They motion him. They throw it to him out in screens. They split him out wide. They send him deep. He can go up and get the football. Like, he can do so many different things. When he gets the ball in space, he is very difficult to be able to bring down. You look at Jacoby Lane, banged up, had some injuries earlier on this season, but he's played really well the last 2 games. It appears that Jacoby is getting back to the Jacoby Lane that maybe we saw last season. 7 catches each of the last 2 games, 14 catches, 139, and a score during that stretch. 6'4", 200. Now, obviously, with that frame, he is a threat in the red zone. Okay, he has been a touchdown machine at USC. But he's also a guy with his long stride. You kind of get him the ball in space. He can make up a lot of ground in a short amount of time. That's another area where Jacoby really excels. Now, those 2 guys, when you have guys that talented, those, of course, are going to be the top guys that you're going to go to. Outside of that, they've got some good options. I don't know if these options are great. I don't know if these options that if you if you take out Lane, if you take out Lemon, I'm not sure if any of these options can be game breakers, go for 7 catches, 125, and 2 scores. But there's certainly options that that can move the chains, that can do some good things. Lake McCree is a very good tight end, 24 catches, 389, and 2 scores this year. They line him up in the slot. They kind of line him up at different spots in the formation so he can he's diverse in their offense, and he can do a variety of things. Tanook Hines is their main receiver outside of those two. He's got 19 catches this season. You also got to watch out for Walker Lyons. He's the other tight end. Pretty decent group, a pretty good pairing of tight ends over here. Now, I want to pivot to the run game right now. They were running the ball very well early in the season when Waymon Jordan was in there, when Eli Sanders was in there. But then both of those running backs went down, and all of a sudden, you had to run with the king. King Miller has stepped in after those 2 injuries that I just mentioned, and he's performed pretty well, the freshman has, in their absence. He's rushed over 125 yards in 3 of his 5 games since being the primary back. And the thing about this run game is it makes USC, it turns them in to that pick your poison. When you have Mayava and when you have the passing game of those weapons as good as it is, and then you can balance it out with the run game in King Miller, that's when USC is operating at their best. I remember last season when Woody Marks would have momentum running the ball, or Quentin Joyner would have momentum running the ball. I remember the Penn State and Washington game specifically for the Trojans. Lincoln Riley would inexplicably then go back to the pass game. You don't see as much of that this season. You see, okay, if the run game is working, we're going to stick with the run game, and we're going to feed that in and eventually try to hit a big play in the passing game, and everything's kind of working together, where maybe last year things were a little bit pulling against each other a little bit this season. So, like, King's worst game was against Notre Dame. He rushed 18 times for 70 yards. So they've been able to run the ball pretty decently this season. Let's talk about the offensive line a little bit. They've been banged up this season. There's been a lot of musical chairs. There's been guys shifting into a lot of different positions. But here's the thing. Even despite some of these injuries and some of these setbacks, USC has been, they've been operating pretty well. Now, I wouldn't call them a great offensive line. I certainly wouldn't call them an elite offensive line, but I would call them a good to a very good offensive line when they're playing at their best, is maybe a way I should probably phrase that. Tobias Raymond, for example, has played 3 different positions. Now, he's currently slated to play at left tackle if Elijah Page is not able to go. We'll talk more about injuries here in just a moment. And here's the thing about Tobias Raymond. I mean, it was raining a lot in LA, and sometimes you're playing out in the backyard, and it's a little bit more of an area full with dirt, and the rain comes, and you got your feet, and it gets wet, and you get stuck in the mud. And you watch Tobias Raymond in pass protection. He doesn't move ultra well, and sometimes it seems like his feet get stuck in the mud, doesn't it? He had a 7.2 Pro Football Focus pass block grade against Iowa. Now, Jaden Mayava was able to kind of counter that, and like I said, his ability to kind of move around, move the pocket, get away from the pressure, and you don't have those big sack numbers for USC, I think, because of Mayava's ability to kind of move around back there. But if Page isn't able to go, Raymond is somebody I think that can certainly be attacked. USC has only allowed 12 sacks this season. That's the same number as Oregon, and Oregon is in the running to be one of the best offensive lines in America this season. Pro Football Focus doesn't love USC's offensive line, I'll say that, in terms of run blocking or pass blocking. They're graded 97th in the country in run blocking, 95th in the country in pass blocking out there. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball. Like, the weakness of the Trojans this season, it doesn't matter who it's been defending the run. USC has given up 807 yards rushing over the last 4 games. That's over 200 yards per game. And we're talking Notre Dame put up 306. Nebraska put up 188, nearly 5 yards per carry for the Huskers. Northwestern put up 130. Their top running back, Caleb Kamalafe, had 7 yards per carry. I mean, Iowa ran for 183. And this was an Iowa team that it seemed like they got away from the run game a little bit in the second half. That's 5.5 yards per carry. Like, you go further back than just this last 4-game stretch. You go back to Illinois, giving up 171 yards to the Illini. That's 5 yards per carry. And like they performed admirably against a run-heavy Michigan team. 109 rush yards, 3.5 yards per carry in that one. But a lot of other games, fool me once, fool me twice. You all know how that saying goes. And it's been more than twice where USC, hasn't been able to deal with the physicality of some of these run games across the Big Ten ultra well right now. Now, when you talk about the run game and when you talk about defending that, you got to start, of course, with the defensive line. Now, I look all across USC's defense. I think they've got some good players, but there's not, especially when it comes to defending the run, there's not a player where I'm like, oh man, you got to double team that guy all the time because of how good he is. Of course, teams will double team a guy. They'll run that duo concept to get to the linebacker. More on that maybe in Oregon's preview in just a moment. But this is a group up front that maybe doesn't have, how do I put this? Maybe a ton of game records. They've actually done pretty well. They're better than Oregon, I'll say this, in getting behind the line of scrimmage and making some TFLs. But I just don't know how consistent it is. Like there's a lot of like really good, I think, players that can do that. But nobody that can that you really have to game plan for. Hey, we always got to know where this guy is or that guy is or things like that. You got 5 guys with 5.5 TFLs or more. Cameron Crawford leads it with 8. 5 guys with 3 or 3.5 sacks this year. Crawford and Shelby lead with 3.5 this season. But I'll say this about the interior defensive line. Okay, they run a lot of 5-man fronts against Iowa. This is a defense. This is a structure under Danton Lynn. Well, they will certainly do that, especially if they view the opponent as a threat in the run game, or maybe if they don't respect their pass game as much. Iowa is a great example of that. Now, there's some injuries on the defensive line, which we'll kind of get to when we talk about injuries a little bit later, but Devin Tompkins is a player in there that has been playing a good amount. I saw him a good amount against Iowa. He got blown off the ball consistently. I'm talking about guys driving him 4 yards down the field. I'm talking about guys that are driving him 5 yards down the field. Okay, Jade Abasiri, shout out Minnesota high school football. I covered his very last game of Minnesota high school football when he played for the Prior Lake Lakers a couple of years ago. Like, he's able to hold his own in there. Jakeem Stewart has proven that he can be a game wrecker at times, although maybe he isn't as consistent. He's going to be awesome in the future, and he's going to be more consistently a weapon and someone that you got to be able to be aware of in the future. But right now, maybe lacks a little bit of consistently it being that consistent guy that can absolutely wreck you up front. So like the linebackers aren't ultra aggressive. Eric Gentry is their leading linebacker back there this season, but he's like a more of an outside guy. Their inside linebackers, Desmond Stevens and some of these other guys, they don't really strike fear in you. So if you can drive back the defensive line, you can get to the second level in the linebackers. That's where a lot of these opposing teams are then able to spring some of these bigger runs up there. Now, let's kind of talk about some of these injuries. Defensive line, Jamal Jarrett. Like, they got 2 big old boys that average 345 pounds, Jamal Jarrett and Keyshawn Silver. Jarrett played in, I think it was 5 games this year, but he is set to have or has had season-ending surgery, so he's out for the remainder of the year. Keyshawn Silver went down versus Iowa, so his status is uncertain for the Oregon game. I talked about Wayman Jordan. I talked about Eli Sanders. Elijah Page at left tackle. That's one that you feel that if USC doesn't have Page, that could cause a lot of problems, especially with what Oregon has coming off the line. Kamari Ramsey and Bishop Fitzgerald, a couple of players in the back end of the secondary that both went out in the Iowa game. Like, Ramsey had an ice pack around his right knee. Fitzgerald went out in the first half and didn't return. Bishop Fitzgerald leads the team in interceptions. He's been an interception machine this season. Christian Pierce has played some solid ball at that safety position. He's played 6 games, but Kennedy Urlacher, a transfer from Notre Dame, is seeing his first significant action. So if those 2 guys aren't able to go, it's going to be a real difference at the safety position. I know Ramsey was playing some nickel as well this season. So, you know the foe. Now it's time to take a look at how the Quack can attack the Trojans on Saturday. The 15th ranked Southern California Trojans coming into Autzen Stadium to take on the 7th ranked Oregon Ducks. The green and yellow, 9.5 point favorites. The over-under sits at 59.5. It all goes down Saturday, 12:30 p.m. Pacific time on CBS. These are the 2 teams. These are the 2 programs on the West Coast, and man, have there been some battles over the years. USC holds a 38-23-2 all-time series lead over the Ducks, but you talk about recent history, Oregon has owned USC. The Ducks have won 3 in a row. The Ducks have won 5 out of the last 6. And Oregon has won 12 of the last 18 games, and that includes a vacated win for USC. I mean, some of the games that really come to mind in this series, you got to go back to 2007. Oregon ranked number 5 in the country, taking on a number 12 USC team, and they beat them 24-17 behind 2 touchdowns from Jonathan Stewart. Nobody can forget Fright Night, Halloween night, 2009. Of course, this was, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinion, this was the big springboard that vaulted Oregon to the success that they'd see going to the national championship game in 2010. That's the great season in 2012 where they lost just 1 game. The national championship game eventually in 2014. I think this was the big springboard, and it was the start of Oregon's dominance, dare I say, and success on the West Coast, and USC maybe falling off a little bit. They beat them by 27. How about 183 on the ground from LaMichael James, 164 on the ground from one of my personal favorites, Jeremiah Masoli. They rushed for nearly 400 yards in that matchup. I mean, 2012 at the Coliseum, Oregon ranked number 4th in the country. USC ranked 17th. This was not basketball. This was a football score, 62-51 Ducks. Kenyon Barner, don't let him fool you with what he's doing on Ducks of a Feather. He's still running at the Coliseum. 321 yards and 5 touchdowns against the Trojans on that particular day. One of the greatest individual performances that I've ever seen in watching college football for this time. This is a special game, I think, for a lot of these, for a couple of these guys that have poured their heart and their soul into this program for so many years. And Bryce Betcher thought last year that Washington game was going to be the last time that he went out to Autzen Stadium, but then he decided to come back. This is the last scheduled home game for Oregon. We'll see if they have We'll see if they have a home playoff game. Noel Whittington is another guy that's poured his heart and soul into this program, and it is scheduled to be his final home game as well. Bryce Betcher has been known to play really big in these rivalry games. Look at how he's fared against Washington. Look at how he's fared against Oregon State. He gets up for these big rivalry games. I think we can maybe see a big game from old Bryce in this matchup. Okay, first thing, get loud and get crazy. Remember last year against Ohio State, this crowd made a difference, a huge difference in the outcome of this game. Remember the Ohio State fans plug in their ears, the false start penalties, and then when you're able to build the momentum, the crowd just keeps on getting a little bit louder now, a little bit louder now, a little bit louder now. And I think the crowd can play a tremendous role. Now, it's not a night game. Of course, that kind of gets people a little bit more juiced. It's in the afternoon, of course, on the Pacific Northwest. But I think this crowd can absolutely be a factor. Get USC out of rhythm with some pre-snap penalties. I think if Oregon comes out looking really good and they've got that spark early on in this game, that crowd, they go down, they get a touchdown, 7 plays, 70 yards, whatever. That's like early success from Oregon, like a 3-and-out for this defense against USC's offense. That's going to be the key to getting this crowd into it and into it early and often. Oregon kind of struggled to get off the field on third downs a little bit at points against Minnesota, and then, really throughout the season. Getting off the field on third down is going to get this crowd a lot more jacked up, and getting this crowd at its peak decibel level on third downs is going to help them also get off the field as well. Now, when you talk about what's actually going on between the lines in this matchup, okay, if you're Will Stein, considering how good you have been running the football, considering how, we'll call it and be nice, below average USC has been at defending the run, you've got to look them dead in the eye and say, we dare you. We double dog dare you to stop this run game. That is the best part of Oregon's offense right now. This offensive line has a size advantage up front against USC, especially, we know Jarrett is out for the season, but especially if Keyshawn Silver is not able to go. There's not, 300-pounders, whereas Oregon's averaging 324 up front on the offensive line. That's the fact of the matter. This is a USC defense that has consistently surrendered yardage against a variety of opponents. The Ducks over 1,000 yards rushing over the last 4 games. They're averaging 264 yards per game during that stretch. I mentioned Devin Tompkins in the scouting report. I watched Iowa, and when they were running that duo concept, center guard, guard tackle, whatever combination is, they come together on one, and then one of them is able to read and bounce up to the linebacker. That's when you got your most successful runs. If I see number 8 in the game, if I see Devin Tompkins in the game, whether it's Poncho and Pregnon, whether it's Pregnon and Harkey, Pregnon and Worrell, whatever side Emmanuel is playing on, I am attacking Devin Tompkins. I am opening up that hole because film has told me that that's something that we can take advantage of. I'm getting to the second level. I'm getting to the linebackers. These aren't ultra-aggressive inside linebackers. Jordan Davison can have success. Noah Whittington can have success. De'Aaron Hill on the outside can have success in this ball game. Embrace your new conference. I know you're going back to the pack, but this one is all about embracing physicality. I wrote about that this week over on Scoop Duck. And you just got to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it until they come up and dedicate extra resources into the box to be able to stop it. And that's when it sets up play action. Dante Moore and the Oregon passing game has been awesome in play action this season. Dante has completed 77% of his play action passes. How about 70 on straight dropbacks? His Pro Football Focus grade, 91.6 in the play action passing game to 79.8 on standard dropbacks. 10.4 yards per attempt completion, however you want to say it, on play action passes this season. So, you run the ball effectively. You get DeCorian Moore. Hopefully he's healthy going over the top. Hey, maybe even Evan Stewart plays. We don't know. Malik Benson over the top. Kenyon Sadiq maybe going down the middle of the field. That's where the play action really comes into play. It isolates these matchups. Marcellus Williams on one side for USC. DeCarlos Nicholson on the other side. They've been playing some better football, but you get them on one-on-one matchups, you're going to hit that big play. I don't know how many of those big plays you're going to hit, but eventually, you're going to strike. Eventually, that's going to happen, I think, in the play-action game. I think a big key for the defense, for Tosh Lapoi's unit, has to be the number one focus. It's got to be defending these USC wide receivers. Okay, you can't let them carve you up. I remember the Indiana game where, They're going to Elijah Strad. They're hitting out route after out route, in-breaking route. I mean, it was on demand for Indiana, and they just kept on moving the football, especially against Ifeoma Badegwu on that one side, and Theron Johnson on that one side as well. You got to find a way to kind of keep these things in check. I mean, I think the obvious thing is you can't let big plays happen over the top with some of these receivers, but here's the thing with USC. They can complete those shorter concepts, and they can convert them into big games. You need to be able to tackle well in space. You can't have you can't have a 5 to 6 yard catch behind the line of scrimmage, or, behind the first down marker, say on like second down, and then maybe what would be like a 3rd and 3. You can't have that now all of a sudden be first down on the other side of the field, on the other side of the 50. That's one thing that you have to be able to do. You have to be able to tackle well in space when USC wants to be able to create in space. These matchups are interesting for Oregon's defensive backs against USC. Now, I mentioned in the scouting report, they move Makai Lemon around a lot. So, and they kind of keep him in the slot. So with Makai, I think that's going to test our SARS. That's going to test Dalen Austin and Jaden Kennedy. That's the name I was thinking of, Jaden Kennedy. Jaden has played some very good football this season. Okay, but matching up on Makai Lemon, a little bit of a different ball game, maybe a little bit. I think that Brandon Finney at 6'2", 200. I think he matches up well in the size at 6'4", 200 with someone like Jacoby Lane. He's confident. He's physical on the outside, and then maybe with somebody like Makai, know where he is. And, have a couple of guys in the vicinity bracket. Do whatever you need to do to be able to contain Makai Lemon, I think, in this game. If that's the strategy where it's like, okay, you keep multiple bodies around Lemon at all times. You rely on the physicality on the outside of someone like Brandon Finney. That could be enough to slow down this passing attack. If you slow down the passing attack, I'm not sure if USC can line up at the line of scrimmage and run the football and be ultra physical to victory, where I believe Oregon can do that certainly as well. I have a feeling USC is going to pass to set up the run game. So if they're not as effective passing, they're not going to be as effective running the football, I think, in this matchup. Folks, I want to talk about Bear Alexander for a minute, and I want to talk about the defensive line for a moment. I'm sure Bear Alexander has heard everything since he's left USC. Bear quit. Bear didn't give an effort. He didn't care. He's lazy. All of these other things. And it should be painfully clear to the biggest USC fan out there, the biggest Oregon fan, the biggest Georgia fan, whatever. Whatever you are, Tony Tuioti, Tosh Lapoy, Dan Lanning, they are getting the most out of Bear Alexander. This is the best football Bear has played in his career. No doubt about that. And then when I just talked about what the defensive line is looking like for USC, that's the difference. That's the difference of what Oregon is doing up front versus what maybe USC is doing up front. Development, folks. That is development, plain and simple. I think Bear Alexander is going to be ultra motivated. I think he can be a force in this game. You think of all the games on the schedule, this is the game where he's been storing it up, where you want to unleash the wild animal. And I think Bear and Amari are going to be two key factors to limiting that run game, right? Limiting and maybe taking away some of the balance that USC has had when they've been successful this season. One other thing that I want to talk about when you talk about the defensive line, he only had 4 snaps in the last game, but Nasir Wyatt is the most explosive pass rusher for the Ducks coming off the edge. He is so freaking fast. He is so freaking quick. He is so freaking explosive. And you got a tackle in Tobias Raymond that doesn't move very well. If I'm getting a 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 6, almost every single one of those scenarios, I'm putting 32 on the field. I'm getting a speed rush. I'm getting a pass rush. Tatum Tuioti, Mateo, Ashton Porter, Blake Purchase, they've all got their roles on this team, and they're all very good players to great players. Okay? But man, Nasir Wyatt has flashed some things on tape as it pertains to a speed rush. I don't think there's anybody better at speed rushing on this team right now than one Nasir Wyatt. So I would watch out for that to maybe be able to get Jaden Mayava a little bit uncomfortable and get to the quarterback maybe a little bit quicker. Okay, folks, it is prediction time. I've been talking way too long. Let's throw this thing out there. I think Oregon has more windows to victory than USC does. If USC is slinging the ball down the field, that's their path. They need to find a way to set up their passing game as best as they possibly can. Whereas Oregon, I think they can pound the rock to victory. I think they have matchups on the perimeter, and Dante Moore can throw the ball around. Being at home, of course, is a big-time advantage. I just think Oregon can do more. I still think USC is going to be able to move the ball. I still think that they're going to be able to put some points, but I've got the Ducks winning. I've got the Ducks covering at home. Give me 32-21. That's an under, though, at 53 total points. That's an under of the 59.5. It's going to be a big one. The Ducks have got their big game black, so I'm going to have my reaction after the game. So make sure you stay tuned for that. This is a big one, folks. I've been waiting for this one. You've been waiting for this one for a very long time. Until next time, I'm Ted LaRue. This has been That Show Out West.